So let's talk about the responsible mistake. Most bad decisions don't come from bad leaders. They come from moments when moving fast feels responsible. Sometimes you have pressure, and moving fast just to get from underneath the pressure can feel like the responsible move. But pressure doesn't break judgment by itself, but what pressure does to our emotions does. And as leaders, we must be able to recognize and read the room and have clarity as to the emotions of a given moment. Of course, fear and anxiety can certainly come into play, but even a level of excitement, of jubilance, can often distort the reality of what's ahead. So neither emotion is necessarily true. Neither emotion is going to really provide a fully accurate picture of what is to come. It probably won't be as good as you think it is, and it's almost certainly won't be as bad as you might think it is. So understanding that and not falling for a false sense of urgency is really key to making superior leadership decisions, especially when there's pressure, especially when there's a crisis, especially when there's a decision that has to be made that you can't unwind. I think the founders of Stripe really were the ones that drove this home for me. There's an interview, I think, on 60 Minutes you could probably pull up where they talk about if it's a decision that can be rolled back, let's do it. But let's do it fast. We're going to learn that way. Motion. Motion is lotion, right? Motion is oil for the machine that is your organization. Got to move. Otherwise, you rust and you get calcified. You're stuck in place. But really getting to that motion as opposed to being still. And then, of course, the decisions that are consequential, the ones that you can't roll back, the ones that have implications for your organization that you can't just undo. Those are the ones that really require a level of emotional intelligence. And that the really unique and special leaders are able to not only manage their emotions, but also able to name courageously and vulnerably name the emotions of the moment. Give space and permission for everyone on the team to feel those emotions, to process those emotions, to acknowledge those emotions, and then switch back to the reasoning side of our brain to think through, to understand the intelligence, the human intelligence we've gathered, the data we've gathered, the time, the scope, the quality, the quantity, whatever the metrics are that we're looking to solve for, if you will, whatever the professional relational circumstances, the stakeholder relationships, internal, external, change, risk, how are we managing these things? What's our communications plan? All of these things are going to be stress tested in a moment of pressure. But if we're not even killed, if we're dysregulated, it can feel responsible to go fast, again, to relieve the pressure. But that can really cause damage if that speed leads us down the wrong path. So we talk about the responsible mistake, and that's it, making the decision too fast. So let's talk about pressure a little bit more. Now, pressure creates emotion. Right? I think we've all experienced some level of pressure, whether we were just taking an exam or a test, or we were in a competition of some sort. Maybe we were an athlete, or maybe we were an actor. We were in theater. I know my daughter's in theater. She's an athlete too. And that pressure to perform, especially when it's unexpected, right? When you've had time to prepare, right, that usually beats the preparation. But if you're talking about a crisis situation, you're talking about something you didn't anticipate, something you didn't expect, it can be really challenging to overcome. So you have to name it. You have to manage it. Fear, urgency, excitement, anxiety, again, they all feel different. So it's not the pressure that causes failure. It's leaders making decisions while emotionally flooded and then calling it decisiveness just to get out from under. All right. So here's three patterns. I got my notes here that really just point out where leaders can go wrong. Three failure patterns. And I've seen these play out. Again, urgency replacing clarity. So speed becomes a proxy for leadership. Oh, they made a decision, right? Go, 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 go. Right? So speed can feel good in the moment, but it can be a drug. As you know, it's like giving the baby candy. You can give your organization, you can give your team that candy, but was that the right move, right? When they should have eaten their vegetables, right? When they had to eat the meatloaf because it's going to serve them well, but the candy gonna feel good in the moment. So what leader are you? Are you going fast? And then movement certainly can replace understanding, right? So certainly you got to have motion. Motion's lotion in the organizational context, right? But movement can also replace understanding. Understanding takes time. Understanding takes intentionality. Understanding requires listening. And that's hard. Having patience under pressure is hard. Having patience in a crisis is hard. And patience is relative. Patience may be give it an hour, give it 5 minutes, give it a week. It is certainly something that is not standard. But also, patience, I can imagine, I would submit actually rather, is a state of mind, a level of calm under pressure. And this is where I believe these skills can be learned to be a leader, to be someone who is emotionally healthy and sound in mind, sound in emotion, and can regulate and manage the moment and not catastrophize, not ignore the emotion, but actually step into it and lead your team and yourself through it in a healthy, productive way, right? So again, no one can articulate what decision is actually being made, right? Because we went so fast. Everyone may have a different opinion if you stopped and asked. So again, this is where urgency can really cause a problem because you went so fast. Pattern number 2, action replacing alignment. We went fast, we didn't get alignment. Now, I said last week, consensus and alignment are not the same thing. We really must get alignment. That means we have to have the same language, the same understanding of the situation, the circumstances, the scope, the project, the crisis. We have to have agreement of definition. We can't just say we agree and keep it moving. So risk, quality, timelines, ownership, they can be assumed in this circumstance. They're not stated. And we need clarity. Now, you may have systems that kind of imply it, but it's always good to restate, right? Just like those of us who are parents know you got to repeat things to kids so it sinks in. Habits, restate it. Don't assume. So communication can feel complete, but it isn't finished, right? So we have that action and we feel like we're done. We want to move forward and get off the hot spot or maybe just get moving. Maybe we could be excited to address the situation, to tackle the big project. But we might have moved too fast. The last one is consensus replacing ownership. And again, consensus is not alignment. So again, emotional discomfort drives group agreement. And sometimes you can have the tail wag of the dog where the room is like, yeah, okay, yes. And the leader's like, okay, everybody feels good, right? When we're talking about feeling good as opposed to, have we thought this through? We go in a certain direction. And then we haven't really thought through the risk matrix. We haven't done a risk analysis. And so who's going to own the downside? Have we identified the risk? Even if we have a high level of confidence, have we at least stopped for a moment and considered some different angles? Have we been, dare I say, the devil's advocate? There's nothing new under the sun. So some very fundamental project management approaches, decision science-based approaches to really unpacking and having healthy conflict, healthy disagreement to surface the things that need to be surfaced. And of course, you make these decisions, you get this consensus, everyone's on board, at least they're going to say they are until things start going the wrong way. Or you have people who will say one thing publicly and behind the scenes, they're undermining, they're gossiping, there's a whisper campaign. They don't feel good. They're not, or at least they're not bringing their best work because they're uncertain that the path that we're on is the correct one or the right one. Now, of course, you're never going to get 100% agreement amongst everyone, but at least having the chance to talk these things out gives you a higher chance of success, a higher chance of buy-in and commitment from your team. So really, it's about emotional management, especially in an urgent situation, especially in a crisis, especially in the unforeseen. So strong leaders necessarily don't eliminate pressure. It's impossible. Can't just eliminate it. And you can't wait for perfect information. Oftentimes moving is going to get you more information, but you have to certainly know which direction to move in to get, so you're getting the right information, right? So it's very delicate. But leaders, there are four things that leaders do. They name the emotional state. This is kind of in summary. They slow the decision moment down, not the organization, right? So the organization has to move. Motion is lotion, but you slow the moment down. So again, it may need 5 minutes, it may need an hour. Maybe at the moment is a week. Maybe it's a little bit more, right? But you get the point. And then you force clarity on the risk. Is this an acceptable risk? Are we stating it? Have we thought about everything? Have we identified it? Is there someone else we should talk to? Do we have the risk identified? And then we finish communication, shared language, and shared ownership. Now, of course, the leader, again, the buck stops here. My leadership philosophy is very clear. The leaders take the blame and give the credit, right? The leaders are here to serve. But you want to have shared language and shared ownership of the result because you anticipate a positive result and you want your team bought in to receive the accolades and the adulation and the feelings that they will get, the justifiable, happy emotional feelings they'll get when the project is successful. So what risks are we actually accepting if we move forward right now is the big question, because there's always going to be risk. So at least asking that question and just sitting in it, sometimes even requires sitting in that uncomfortable silence, but it's okay. It's okay to sit in that silence. It can make people don't like silence, but silence is very powerful. Dare I say silence is a form of that patience. So if a leader can't answer the risk question, they're not being decisive, then they're being emotionally reactive. And I know this may hit some people in a hard way. And again, the emotional reaction may not be obvious outwardly, it may not be obvious to you, but you have to step back out of the moment. And this is where experience, maturity, and judgment come into play. So that is our conversation for this week. And really enjoy hearing some feedback in the comments. And again, pressure isn't the problem. Emotion is, and emotion is not a bad thing, but how we manage it in a crisis can be. I'm Russell Fugett. I'm a decision scientist. I'm a outsourced number two. I'm an operator. I'm a project management professional. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.